non-farm payroll jobs estimates come from a survey of business establishment and government agencies and are intended to measure the number of jobs, not the number of people employed. These estimates exclude employees in agriculture, private households, and the self-employed. As we noted in today's press release, the reference period for the establishment and household surveys was the reference week for September was specifically September 12th to September 18th. Therefore, these data provide a snapshot of Colorado's employment situation as vaccination rates among the adult population continue to increase and pandemic-related restrictions were relaxed for businesses across the state. Additionally, the September reference week overlaps a period in which COVID-19 case rates for Colorado and the nation remained elevated due to the Delta variant. Revisions to September data, along with preliminary estimates for October, will be released Friday, November 19th. For the household survey, Colorado's seasonally adjusted unemployment rate fell to 5.6% in September from 5.9% in August. This marks a continued decline in the unemployment rate over the past several months. The rate stood at 6.4% in April. Additionally, the number of unemployed Coloradans dropped by 10,000 in September to 178,800 in total. The count of unemployed individuals in the state has decreased by 40,100 over the past year. As a reminder, the total unemployed figure derived from the household survey includes a broader definition of unemployment beyond just those receiving benefits. And as always, we will send out the talking points so you don't have to frantically write down all these data points. As I mentioned last month, it is uncertain what kind of impact the recent expiration of federal unemployment benefits may have on the state's employment and unemployment rates and trends in the coming months. While the unemployment rate did drop 0.3 percentage point in September, it's not clear that expiring benefits were the primary or sole reason for that decrease. Additionally, the reference week for September, the 12th through the 18th, may be too close to the September 4th expiration period to tie the drop in the unemployment rate to those particular claimants gaining employment. However, whatever the drivers, the trends are certainly moving in a positive direction. In September, Colorado was tied with Texas for the 35th lowest unemployment, seasonally adjusted unemployment rate in the nation. Nebraska had the lowest rate at 2%, and California and Nevada had the highest rates at 7.5%. The U.S. unemployment rate decreased by 0.4 percentage point last month to 4.8%. While there is a gap of 0.8 percentage point between the Colorado and U.S. unemployment rates, that difference is actually not statistically significant. While we typically focus on seasonally adjusted data, which is best for month-to-month comparisons, it's interesting to note that on a not seasonally adjusted basis, the state and U.S. unemployment rates were identical at 4.6%. In fact, that's the lowest not seasonally adjusted unemployment rate for the state since it was 2.9% in February 2020. Colorado's employment to population ratio of 64.3% in September ranked as the 7th highest in the nation. The employment to population ratio measures the share of the state's 16-plus population that is employed. In comparison, the U.S. employment to population ratio last month was 58.7%. Additionally, the state's labor force participation rate of 68.2% ranked 4th highest in September and well exceeds the U.S. rate of 61.6%. And despite a slight drop in Colorado's participation rate since April, the state still has the 10th fastest rate of recovery for that metric. And basically what that means is measuring the difference in the participation rate in September of 2021 compared to the rate in February of 2020. As we mentioned in today's press release, the counties with the highest not seasonally adjusted unemployment rates were Pueblo, Huerfano, Los Animas, Fremont, Adams, and Bent. And that is relatively unchanged from what we've reported the past 2 months. 50 counties had September unemployment rates that were under 5%. A year prior, that number only totaled to 22. Additionally, a total of 46 Colorado counties had unemployment rates that were lower than the U.S. The U.S. has not seasonally adjusted unemployment rate of 4.6% last month. Among the 7 metropolitan areas in the state, Pueblo had the highest unemployment rate at 7%. Boulder and Fort Collins had the lowest rates at 3.6 and 3.9 respectively. Denver, Greeley, Colorado Springs, and Grand Junction all had rates of 4.8%. And it is recommended to compare all these sub-state rates I mentioned to the statewide not seasonally adjusted unemployment rate of 4.6%. Moving on to the establishment survey, the preliminary estimates show that on a seasonally adjusted basis, Colorado added 5,100 non-farm payroll jobs from August to September, and that ranks as the 17th most jobs added last month. While that represents a decent number of jobs added, that does exceed the pre-pandemic average monthly gain for the state. It does fall short of the average from February to July, which is around 12,000 per month. Additionally, August payroll figures were revised down slightly by 600 jobs, which altered the change from July to a gain of 5,000 rather than the originally estimated increase of 5,600. As a reminder, monthly revisions are based on additional responses from businesses and government agencies since the last published estimates. The state's lower pace of over-the-month job gains in August and September mirrors the U.S. The nation, which had added around 1 million payroll jobs in both June and July, experienced a slowdown in August with the gain of only 366,000 jobs, and September, which was an increase of under 200,000. It is notable that the slowdown in added jobs over the past 2 months coincides with the surge in COVID-19 cases and subsequent elevated levels across the U.S. between the July, August, and September reference weeks. The state has added 114,400 payroll jobs in the first 9 months of 2021. That ranks nationally as the 13th most jobs gained so far in 2021. Colorado has now regained 297,900 of the 375,800 non-farm payroll jobs lost in March and April of last year. The total job gains of 297,900 over the past 17 months represent a recovery of a little over 79% of those lost jobs earlier last year. And that ranks as the 17th fastest rate of recovery in the nation over that period. A similar analysis of the change in U.S. Non-farm payroll jobs since April 2020 reveal the U.S. has added back about 78% of lost jobs. Despite the lower total non-farm job gains in September, there were several sectors that added a significant number of jobs last month. Leisure and hospitality payrolls grew by 3,900. As a reminder, that industry is primarily comprised of hotels and restaurants. Leisure and hospitality continues to be the primary driver of industry gains in 2021, accounting for about 64% of jobs added in 2021. Of course, leisure and hospitality also had a substantial hole to climb out of, having shed over 171,000 payroll jobs in early 2020. Other industries with substantial job gains last month include trade, transportation, and utilities, with the bulk of those added jobs within the trade subset of that industry, as well as professional and business services and other services. Professional and technical services was the driver of professional and business services job growth in September. The private industry that shed more than 1,000 jobs in September was education and health services, with those losses primarily coming from the health side. At a more detailed look, it is specifically the social assistance subsector that drove those over-the-month losses. And the largest occupations within the social assistance industry are typically childcare workers and home health and personal care aides. On a seasonally adjusted basis, the government sector lost 3,300 jobs last month, the majority of which were concentrated within the local government education component of that sector. Shifts in seasonally adjusted government employment may be tough to interpret in the latter half of 2021, which is also a national issue that the Bureau of Labor Statistics identified within their employment situation press release from earlier this month. Per the BLS, most back-to-school hiring typically occurs in September. Hiring this September was lower than usual, resulting in a decline after seasonal adjustment. Recent employment changes are challenging to interpret as pandemic-related staffing fluctuations in public and private education have distorted the normal seasonal hiring and layoff patterns. As a reminder, there was a rather large jump in seasonally adjusted government education employment in July. That's something I discussed in a prior press release. In the first 9 months of 2021, when looking at the state's 18 industry sectors, accommodation and food services has added the most jobs at 59,000, or 52% of all total non-farm payroll jobs. Arts, entertainment, and recreation has the second most gains at 14,700. As a reminder, accommodation and food services and arts, entertainment, and recreation combine to make up the leisure and hospitality industry. Professional and technical services has added 13,100 payroll jobs in 2021, and that is a very high-paying sector. Despite the losses in September, government rounds out the top four at 10,400 jobs gained this year. On the other hand, manufacturing job gains are weak in 2021, while retail, trade, construction, finance, and insurance have experienced job loss since December. Overall, the private sector added 8,400 jobs in September, with August payroll numbers revised up 800 jobs. The gain of 8,400 private sector jobs is the most for the state since May and ranked 15th nationally. From May 2020 to September, private businesses have added 302,200 payroll jobs compared to losses of 362,200 in March and April of last year. That represents a recovery of around 83% of private sector jobs lost earlier in the year, which outpaces the US recovery rate of 81%. Colorado's private sector recovery rate ranks as the 17th fastest in the nation. And then finally, here are some numbers of jobs added in the first 9 months of 2021 for substate Colorado, specifically the 7 metropolitan statistical areas, or MSAs, and the remaining residual of a state that is not in an MSA. The Denver MSA has added 70,700 jobs, or 62% of the 114,400 total over that same period. Colorado Springs has gained a little under 17,000 jobs, while the number of jobs added in Boulder totaled 9,400. Fort Collins has added 4,500 jobs so far in 2021, with Greeley lagging just slightly behind at 3,700. The Grand Junction and Pueblo metro areas have gained 1,300 and 1,000 payroll jobs respectively. The remaining 47 non-metro counties have combined to gain an aggregated total of 7,000 non-farm payroll jobs in the first 9 months of 2021. With that, I can jump into questions. I see we have one from Wayne. Does the large difference between payroll and household employment growth indicate that many people are taking on contract jobs or starting their own businesses? Wayne, do you mean for this particular month or over a longer period of time? Both. With the employment gain in the household survey was about 9,000, and the payroll survey was about 5,000. They've really been moving fairly in lockstep over the past 6 months, I think. I think it's probably too early to kind of take those assumptions in terms of like, are we seeing, people take on contract jobs? That's certainly possible, and that may be a trend too that we started to see even pre-pandemic. So I think it'll take a bit to parse those out. But as of right now, I think those two series, from an employment standpoint, while the levels might be different, because again, they are different surveys and they are measuring different things, I think the direction is fairly similar. And unless I get other questions, we'll have to wrap it up. But I'll hold for a couple, a little bit here to see if there's any other questions. I know it takes a bit to type in, but I can only stall for so long. So yeah, we'll wait just a little bit for any other questions, and if not, then we'll just close out this call.
Brian, the Bronco offense managed to stall for an entire half.
Yes, it was very disappointing. Tamara asks that the labor force participation, continues to shrink, but existing participants are finding jobs. How are we really doing compared to pre-pandemic? As you noted, the labor force participation has shrunk a bit, about a 0.5 percentage point. As I mentioned in my notes, that's still the 10th fastest recovery in the nation in terms of where the participation rate was pre-pandemic and where the participation rate is now. The U.S. Participation rate declined by a 10th percentage point last month. I think compared to other states, we're doing relatively well in terms of still having a high labor force participation rate, again, fourth in the nation, and the recovery in the participation rate. In terms of, when people become employed, are they coming from unemployed status or are they coming from not in the labor force? I think that's difficult to assess at the state level, but I think a lot of trends are fairly well. However, the non-farm payroll jobs have slowed down in terms of jobs added. And if we continue at a pace of, say, 5,000 jobs added per month, while again, that does match the pre-pandemic level of jobs added, it really needs to be 2.5 times higher than that to really get to those pre-pandemic levels of payroll employment by sometime early next year. So I think it's certainly a trend we want to see reverse in terms of that slower job growth. The national numbers that will come out for October, I think those will come out in a couple of weeks. That will be a good indicator of nationally what that looks like. If say job gains are again at around 250,000, or 500,000 or 1 million, like we saw earlier in the summer, that will probably give a good indication of where Colorado might be as well. In terms of Tamara, I think I touched on your second point, as you said. Again, we are still in a pandemic. There's massive distortions to the labor market, to supply chains. This is something that we haven't seen in 100 years at this magnitude, and the economy is completely different. So I certainly see a lot of positive trends, but again, there's I think still a lot of noise and volatility to work through. Otto, what are we seeing in new UI claims and what industries are they coming from? Otto, we're still releasing the weekly data on LMI Gateway in terms of claims levels. As far as initial claims for regular UI, those have been ranging around 2,000 for the last 6 weeks or so. And that's substantially lower than what we've seen, while still a little higher than it was pre-pandemic. Seeing consistent numbers around 2,000 is, I think, very positive. In terms of the industries, I haven't looked at the industry breakouts of late. We do have a monthly report that we're required to submit to the Employment and Training Administration every month. That is specifically for the week containing the 19th. So I can look up just after this call. I'll get back to you, Aldo, and just kind of let you know what that composition looks like for industry level claims if you're interested. You also asked, to what degree is the slower job growth due to lack of openings versus jobs going unfulfilled? As some of you may know, there's a series called the Job Openings Labor Turnover Survey from the BLS. Just today, the BLS announced that, or released official state data through August. This includes openings data, quits data, similar things you'll see at the US level. I believe this will lag the US by about 2 weeks. And, really what we've been seeing is a tightening labor market in terms of the openings to unemployed ratio. For Colorado, Colorado had the in August, the 35th highest ratio, around 0.9. So that means for when you look at unemployed divided by job openings is 0.9. US is about 0.8%. So US as a whole has a tighter labor market. I'm sorry, a tighter ratio of openings to the unemployed. But really, we've been seeing these very low numbers, and I know anecdotally we've been talking since about March about employers not being able to fill jobs. So this conversation has been going on a while. We saw some very robust job gains in the state and nationally. In the summertime, again, the U.S. in July added nearly 1.1 million payroll jobs. So I think it's difficult to see, when we're looking at slower job growth, like what is the driver there? Again, I still think that there's, as we're in a pandemic and when we see increased case rates, I think that is a driver, but you can also see supply chains. Labor tightness could be a driver as well. It's really just difficult to parse all those out, I think. Tamara, were there any changes to wages? I haven't looked at the wages, but that's, I can easily get back to you on that if you want. I just don't have any talking point for wages at this moment. All right, great questions. Here we go. Blair, anything you're seeing on county level data in terms of seasonal employment with ski season upcoming that stands out? I think we just had our second ski resort announce, maybe Keystone announced that they were opening fairly soon. And then one opened maybe a couple Saturdays ago. So we're not going to really see anything in terms of reflecting that anytime soon. I believe typically with those areas, there's a very distinct pattern where, when you have that shoulder season, and then when you ramp up to the ski season, those are pretty consistent trends that we've seen, every year. But I think it will still take a couple months for us to start seeing what that, looks like, Blair. Okay, any other questions? And Blair, if you have like any specific kind of things you were thinking about in terms of that question, feel free to forward that on to us and we can try to maybe look into a little bit more if there's something specific you're kind of seeking there. Yes, thank you, CDLE1. Okay, 15 seconds if you don't have a question, and then we'll close it out. Thank you for everyone for participating. Again, our next press call for the employment situation will be Friday, November 19th, and we'll be going over the October numbers. October will be key too to just see, in terms of the job growth, what does that look like? The unemployment rate, do we continue to see that fall? And again, while the around 5,000 payroll jobs added is lower than what it was, I think relative to the nation, it's still strong job growth for the state. And with that, I think we'll close it out. Thank you, everybody.